Remember when Marvel used to make interesting superhero movies that didn't try to preach at you or elevate side characters above the lead because of immutable characteristics? Remember when Marvel were more interested in a good story, strong characters, and providing an escape from our daily humdrum lives and allowing us to enjoy an hour and a half of pure entertainment? Remember when Marvel used to like their characters and try to sympathetically recreate them on the big screen in a way that was accurate to the comics, yet still cinematic enough to give a great movie-going experience? Those were the days. But of course those days are long behind us. Phase 4 put paid to all that, and in its place we are left with the age of the milkshake, ushered in by Marvel Comics and all the hair dye and gender non-conformity that entails. And so, Phase 4 becomes Phase 5, and Marvel begins Phase 5 as they intend to carry on, with a movie that is utterly vacuous, lacking charm, and chock full of the kind of pointless nonsense plot points that are most probably going to become a staple of the MCU. We have the strong female characters that can do no wrong, even when they are unanimously and unfathomably wrong. You have the magical nonsense device that makes everything possible by being so very stupid that it just had to be included because the writers were incapable of coming up with a good reason for the events of the movie without it. You have the female child genius because you have to balance the strong female characters with the smart ones when want to destabilize the agenda by making these characters the opposite of female, if Marvel can remember what that is anymore. You have men of a certain colour being insulted and degraded and having their movie franchise taken away from them. You have a plot that makes no sense, but that doesn't matter, because nothing really matters. There's no moral backbone holding anything together, at least no moral backbone that the average person would agree with. You have the random far left preaching that is very badly put across and makes the character pretty unlikable. You have the confusing mind-bending CGI that, while impressive, can be quite bad, or the scale is so huge that it just becomes a massive blur of stuff that gives you a headache. You have the out-of-place attempts at humour, because it's Marvel, and therefore it has to be funny, even when it should be playing it straight-laced and serious. If you were worried for your daughter's life, would you stop and make offhand funny remarks about being confused with Thor? Probably not. In short, this is Phase 5. This is what we have to look forward to. This is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. But before I get started, please consider subscribing, as that would be pretty awesome. And if you like this content, give it a like. Okay, on with the vid. So the first stepping stone into the next stage of the MCU? Bloody hell, even saying MCU feels like a dirty word, and not one of the fun ones that you say for emphasis when you get angry or when you stub your toe. No, it feels like one of the bad ones, like the C word or the N word. Or maybe one of those Egyptian swear words that my partner refuses to tell me no matter how much I cajole her. If only we could go back to when the MCU was exciting and filled us with wonder at the possibilities, instead of now when it is sickening and fills us with dread and pessimism for the future of comic book movies. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. The strangest thing about this is the title, because Ant-Man and the Wasp are both supporting characters in this movie. They're not the driving force, they're not the protagonists, they're just there because the subject matter is in their wheelhouse. The main character in this movie is Janet Van Dyne, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, and I'm not complaining about this. I think that on the whole she did a good job with what she had to work with, and what she had to work with was a script that required her to have been slutting herself about while she was trapped in the quantum realm. She even slept with Bill Murray, who for reasons unknown decides to make a cameo in this movie, that as far as I can tell was utterly superfluous except to inform us that Janet had trouble keeping her legs together. I'm not sure it's particularly worth explaining the plot, because it is so messy and full of holes and stupidity that I really don't think anyone should be subjected to the brain drain pain and suffering that you'd have to be put through, but I will give you a few pointers so you can see how unworthy of your time watching this movie is. So, while Janet was stuck in the quantum realm, she found that there was a whole world full of all sorts of creatures that she could sleep with, and one of them was called Kang. Yes, he is back, because Marvel has chosen to make Phase 5 all about defeating Kang, the megalomaniacal destroyer of worlds who has beaten everyone he has ever come up against, who even boasts about defeating the Avengers of other worlds, and who is now here, threatening to conquer this Earth. But he is stuck, because Janet, when she wasn't sleeping with him, accidentally discovered that he is a psychotic nutjob bent on world domination, who must be stopped at all costs. To that end, she uses Pym particles to enlarge Kang's multiversal power core to an unusable size, which angers him as he needs it to escape the quantum realm and continue his mission of apparently just being a bastard. Now here is where things get a bit stupid, and unfathomably so. For reasons that Janet never elaborates on, though I am guessing it has something to do with her yo-yo knickers, she decides to keep her knowledge of Kang to herself, even though she is a member of a family who make themselves small and huge all the time, and who are without doubt going to end up going back to the quantum realm because, of course, they are. And yet she constantly refuses to divulge any information about the quantum realm, including there's a megalomaniac bent on conquering and destroying all the worlds of the multiverse in there, so we probably shouldn't open any portals. Okay, coolio. So, what's for dinner? No, that would have been far too sensible, and would have negated the need for this movie, which in turn would have removed any chance for Marvel to undermine yet another character with immutable characteristics that they no longer like. The story continues with Scott's daughter, who has changed into a completely different person since the last time we saw her as a grown-up. And I don't just mean the actress swap, she has now become part of the cancer that is infecting our society, no doubt caused by a school system that is infested with the sort of people that would have made Chairman Mao proud. Though, at least she doesn't have the multicoloured hair and call herself they, them, which incidentally is one of the clearest signs of mental illness I have ever come across. It makes you wonder why they closed all the sanatoriums, when they are needed more than ever before. Bedlam would be making a roaring trade these days, offering tours to go and look at these nutters. But I digress. So, Scott's daughter is now somewhat insufferable, and joy of joys, she is now one of the main characters, because obviously we need someone female to replace Scott, since we now have Michelle Pfeiffer as the grandma, we have Angeline Lilly as the mum, and now Catherine Newton as the daughter. There isn't much space for a pesky straight white male. She has a suit, and she is allowed to piss about with all the Ant-Man technology, and even shrink cop cars without any repercussions from her family or the law. Did I mention that she is now a genius inventor? No? Well, she is a girl, and this is Marvel, so it's a given that she is either a badass or a genius. And what she invents, and no, I'm not joking, or trying to make it sound sillier than it actually is what Hank Pym calls a subatomic Hubble telescope, which allows people to observe apparently the whole of the quantum realm in minute detail by sending a signal that when it returns gives them a map of what it hit. Of course, if you send a signal somewhere and there's intelligent life, then they could possibly follow that signal back to the source, which is exactly what happens, and a portal suddenly opens and everyone gets sucked through. Now, I still don't understand how a telescope lens can suddenly become a physical portal, nor do I understand why there was a sudden vacuum and everyone got sucked into it, the way they do when you open an airlock in deep space, including an ant farm of clever ants. Why is there breathable air, yet the people and creatures that live there seem to have a multitude of different forms that appear to not necessitate human requirements? One of them even looks like a robot and has a bloody laser for a face. And where the hell is the quantum realm, since it has gravity? Because they fell into it, it must be on Earth, and yet they end up in a land with, land, which means that there must be a quantum realm that is even smaller than the mid-quantum realm that they end up in. I always thought that the quantum realm would be a kind of misty nothingness with no formal solidified design, which is why it was so hard to escape from. But no, it is a place like any other place, just weird with air jellyfish and so on. There are just so many questions, and don't expect any answers. For all we know, the quantum realm is a foot-square section of the carpet in Hank Pym's basement. Okay, back to what passes for the story. Everyone ends up in the quantum realm, but they have become split up. Scott and his daughter Cassie end up in a kind of village of quantum natives who are rebelling against the ruler of the world. Have you guessed who it is yet? Yes, it's Kang. He has, in the time that Janet's been gone, conquered the world. Then MODOK attacks the natives. MODOK is a classic Marvel villain whose name quite amusingly means mental organism designed only for killing. And it turns out that MODOK is actually Darren, the bad guy from the original Ant-Man movie who survived and became, well, what you see here. MODOK brings Scott and Cassie to Kang, who threatens to kill Cassie if Scott doesn't fix his multiversal power core, which Janet had sabotaged before her escape. So Scott jumps into the power core and has a freakish adventure among a multitude of himselves. He regains the core, but Kang reneges on his deal, because he's an evil bastard, so of course he would. In the meantime, Janet, Hope and Hank all landed together and are meeting with a friend of Janet's. This friend of Janet's is played by none other than Bill Murray, who for reasons unknown decided that now was a good time to get involved in the Marvel movie. But sadly for him, we are way past the point where turning up in a Marvel movie is a cool thing for an A-list Hollywood actor to do. There was a time when seeing Jeff Bridges, Robert Redford, Sylvester Stallone, Glenn Close, Tommy Lee Jones was a cool cameo. Something to talk about. But now seeing Bill Murray just makes me feel sad, as though somewhere an angel is crying. So after Janet explains that her friend can help them, they find that instead he betrayed them and is working for Kang. So they beat the bad guys and steal Bill's ship, with Hank at the controls. I suspect that this was a turning point in Michael Douglas's life. When he stuck his hands into those two vent hoses made of the stuff that is used to direct moist air out of a tumble dryer, you can almost see him shrivel up inside. You can feel his embarrassment. It is painfully sad to watch. They only bother to CGI the pipes the first time he gets into the ship. The rest of the film, they are literally just clear vent hoses that wouldn't have been out of place in a 50s sci-fi B-movie. They must have run out of money CGIing a million Scott Langs, so they didn't have anything left for ship controls. So now that Michael Douglas probably feels that his career has hit an all-time low, let's continue with what is generously called the plot. Kang seems to have all the power in the world, but still seems to be threatened by Ant-Man and his relatives, especially when he goes big and starts attacking his spinny disc portal thing. But even with the help of his obnoxious daughter, Scott can't beat the evil Kang. Not until Hank arrives with, you guessed it, the clever ants from the ant farm that got sucked into the quantum realm with them. Only they got caught in some kind of time thing that caused them to advance thousands of years in a small amount of time. So they are now super intelligent and powerful, but they still like Hank, so they agree to help him defeat Kang. And so with their help, and after an, oh now he is still not beaten, but now he is moment, they are all finally free to go back home. Which they do. The end. Thank whichever deity you prefer, this crap is over. Reliving this movie through the medium of sarcasm and scorn was almost as bad as rewatching it would have been. I can't fathom why Marvel decided that this was the direction to take Ant-Man. He should have stayed fun and quirky. Paul Rudd shouldn't have been cucked out of his own movie. There shouldn't have been so many messy characters that we didn't give a damn about. The script shouldn't have read as though it were at a buffet and starving hungry, so it decided to put some of everything on its plate, and then waddled back to its seat and gorged itself on everything it could shove into its fat foaming mouth, and then turned on a camera and vomited it all over the floor, then forced us to watch the resultant film. The cast do their best with what they have to work with, but what they have to work with was scraped off of the floor of the nearest animal shelter, which is probably where Marvel Comics has been receiving its inspiration. Paul Rudd, the lovable rogue and star of the previous two movies, takes a back seat and spends most of the movie being derided for writing a book about his experiences with the Avengers. Even his jokes are out of place in a movie that has taken a turn for the more serious. Michelle Pfeiffer is given the role of strong female, so she does that. Michael Douglas managed to look vaguely embarrassed, which probably didn't require any acting. Evangeline Lilly, after having been introduced as the most amazing woman in the world, has absolutely zero to do. It makes you wonder why her character's name is in the title. And then you remember, this is Marvel. They would have rather removed Ant-Man himself than her. Catherine Newton plays the most annoying version of Cassie possible. Perhaps that is why they changed actress. Maybe the original girl just couldn't do whiny, annoying and entitled well enough for the demands of the script. Jonathan Majors was actually pretty good this time round, after I absolutely hated him in Loki. A TV show so bad that it made one of the MCU's best characters into a joke to match what Taika Waititi did to Thor. If you haven't watched Loki, then I implore you to forget that I ever mentioned it and move along with your life in blissful ignorance of its existence. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is a disgrace of a movie that simply fails at every point. It wasn't engrossing. I couldn't stop watching the clock wishing for it to end. It wasn't fun. The jokes fell flatter than Coyote falling off a cliff. It wasn't interesting. The whole Kang story so far has done nothing but ruined great characters and made the MCU smell worse than gone-off milk that's been left in the sun. It wasn't clever. The story was so unutterably stupid and contrived that the Jolly Green Giant could have saved the day, and I would have been neither surprised nor interested.
Ho ho ho.
It wasn't memorable. Even now as I write this, the details are starting to fade into darkness, from whence they will never escape because nobody is going to be rewatching this pile of vomitous effluent. Phase 5 is simply a funeral march for the MCU. Instead of throwing it in a hole 6 foot deep to make sure no one accidentally digs it back up, they're marching around with its corpse as though Weekend at Bernie's was their inspiration for keeping the party going. Sadly, this is only the beginning, and there is more of this torture yet to come. Marvel aren't going gentle into that good night. They're going to rage and burn and destroy everything they can along the way. This has been Movie Suck, wishing you are all very well, and wondering how long it will be before Hollywood realizes its folly. Signing out. Leave a like, share, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the flip side.